I'm Lauren Mitchell, 35 years old, and 3 days ago, my mother told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas. I stood in the middle of my office with her voice still ringing in my ear, not sure whether to cry or laugh. This is the same mother whose mortgage I've paid every month for the last 3 years, the same house I've flown home to every Christmas. Arms full of gifts, bills already paid. She didn't sound angry when she said it, just certain like the decision had been settled days ago. By the time I hung up the gifts I'd carefully wrapped, felt heavier than they had that morning. My hands were still shaking when I opened my laptop and started canceling everything, and that's when I made a decision I probably should have made years ago. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been pushed aside by the people you gave everything to. I grew up in a small town called Greenfield, Ohio. Just cornfields, high school football, and the kind of neighbors who always waved from their porches. My parents, Tom and Denise, weren't rich by any means. Dad worked at the local paper mill. Mom picked up hours as a substitute teacher when she could. And my younger brother Kyle was the kind of kid who never had to be asked twice to take the last piece of cake. We didn't have a lot, but we had enough. Sunday dinners, family birthdays, 4th of July, cookouts down by the lake. My parents taught us to be kind, work hard, and keep our promises. I believed in all of it. And when the recession hit during my junior year, I watched those values get tested. Dad's hours got cut. Mom started working more days at different schools just to make ends meet. There were nights when I'd hear them whispering in the kitchen after we went to bed. Bills mostly, worries they didn't want us to carry. I couldn't fix the money problems, but I could control my grades. School became my escape hatch. I worked every spare hour to earn scholarships, and when I got a full ride to business school at Penn, my parents cried like someone had handed them a second chance. They couldn't afford to help with tuition, but I never held that against them. By the time I turned 25, I was living in Chicago in a one-bedroom apartment the size of a storage unit, eating canned soup and saving every penny. I'd landed a junior role at an investment firm, and within a year, I was sending money home. At first, it was small stuff, car repairs, a dental bill, groceries when the fridge broke. But it added up. Then Dad had a heart attack. The medical bills wiped them out almost overnight. I flew home, met with the bank, and restructured the mortgage under my name. It was a clean fix legally. I owned the house, and they stayed in it rent-free. I handled the payments, taxes, insurance. They kept up the yard and utilities. It felt fair at the time. Every Christmas I went big. Flights Catering presents everything down to the lights on the porch. Last year alone, I spent nearly $10,000 just making the holiday special. I never asked them to thank me. I just wanted it to feel like family again. Meanwhile, Kyle moved back in. After dropping out of community college, he drifted between jobs, dog-walking warehouse shifts, a failed attempt at starting a podcast. I never once heard Mom or Dad ask him to chip in. If he needed money, they called me, and I gave it. 2 months ago, I got promoted to Senior VP. The pay jump was huge, but so were the hours. Still, I never missed a family event. I drove 5 hours to Greenfield every month, no matter how tired I was. Then came Thanksgiving. I took the red-eye and got there by noon, walked into the kitchen expecting a smile. Instead, Mom looked at me, kept talking to Kyle's girlfriend, some woman I barely knew, and said, "Well, look who finally made time for us." That was the first time I felt it, like I didn't belong in my own family. But I pushed it down, smiled, set the table, passed the potatoes. What I didn't know was that they'd already made their Christmas plans, and I wasn't part of them. I woke up the next morning still thinking maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I'd misunderstood the call, heard something that wasn't really there. But the silence on my phone told me otherwise. No follow-up, no apology. Just a quiet morning and a calendar reminder that my flight to Greenfield was supposed to leave in 3 days. I made coffee, sat at the edge of my bed, and stared at the stack of Christmas gifts I'd wrapped the night before. Fishing gear for Dad, a new kitchenware set Mom had bookmarked last fall. The latest gaming console Kyle kept talking about but said he couldn't afford, even a silver bracelet for his girlfriend Danielle, just to try and make things a little easier. They'd all been picked out carefully boxed with tissue paper bows tied the way Mom used to do when we were little. Now they felt like reminders of a gathering I wasn't welcome at. By 9, I was sitting at my desk staring at the spreadsheet I'd opened out of habit. But the numbers didn't mean anything. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I wasn't working, I was waiting for someone to realize what they'd said, waiting for the phone to ring. It didn't. Instead, around lunchtime, a text popped up from Danielle. "You might want to call your mom about Christmas plans." That was it. No explanation. Just a sentence that confirmed what I already knew. I dialed the number without thinking, still trying to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. She picked up after 2 rings. "We all talked Lauren, and we just think it's better this way." Her voice didn't shake. She didn't sound angry or upset, just matter-of-fact, like she was telling me the grocery list changed. "Better how I asked, better without me." "It's not personal," she said. "We just thought you'd be too busy, always on your phone, always working. Kyle says it makes everyone feel tense." I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. I've had this time off approved for months. I rearranged my entire end-of-year schedule. I know she said. But it's not just the time. It's how you show up. The designer clothes the over-the-top gifts. Danielle said it feels like you're showing off, like you're trying to prove something. I didn't know what to say to that. I'd gone out of my way to dress down at family events. Jeans, a sweater. I brought gifts because they couldn't afford those things, not to flaunt anything, just to make Christmas feel full. Was Dad part of this decision, I asked? She hesitated. We talked about it. He agreed it would be less stressful. I waited for something more, some kind of reassurance, but it didn't come. "We're still doing the catering," she added. "It was generous of you to arrange that. And of course, if you already bought the gifts, you can send them." The line went quiet. I looked at the framed photo on my desk, Dad holding the grill lid open, Kyle grinning beside him, Mom with her arm around my shoulder. A cookout from 5 years ago. It looked like a happy family. I didn't recognize those people anymore. "I see," I said quietly. "Don't be dramatic, Lauren. It's just one Christmas. You can come for Easter if your schedule allows." I ended the call without saying goodbye. Then I sat there blinking at the blinking cursor on my computer screen, unsure how the day had taken such a sharp turn. By the time I made it home that night, my phone was full of missed calls from Madison. I didn't answer. I just changed into sweatpants and turned off the Christmas lights I'd put up the week before. The next morning, I called the restaurant. "I need to cancel a catering order for December 24th, I told them. They said they could refund half the deposit since it was within the cancellation window. That was fine. Next, I called the community shelter, where I'd made the donation in my family's name. "Hi, this is Lauren Mitchell. I gave a contribution for your Christmas meal program. I'd like to make a change." The woman on the phone thanked me warmly. "Please remove my family's name from the acknowledgement. And actually, I'd like to increase the donation. Can you serve more families if I double it?" Her voice caught slightly as she answered, "Yes, we absolutely can. I wired the funds that morning. By noon, I was at the bank, the same one where I'd arranged the mortgage 3 years ago. The woman at the desk, Allison, greeted me by name and brought up the account. "How can I help you today? I need to know what happens if I stop making payments." Her pen paused over the paperwork. There would be a grace period. After 3 months, they'd initiate foreclosure proceedings. Your credit would take a hit. Are you experiencing financial hardship? "No," I said, just reassessing the arrangement. We went over scenarios, transferring the loan, selling the home, refinancing under new terms. I took notes, asked questions, and left with a folder of paperwork tucked under my arm. When I got home, I opened a new email. Subject change in plans. Mom, Dad Kyle. Following our recent conversation, I'm making a few adjustments. The Christmas catering has been canceled. January's mortgage payment will not be made. I've arranged for all future statements to be sent directly to you so you can decide how to proceed. I've respected your decision about Christmas. I ask that you respect mine regarding financial support. Lauren. I hit send. Then I turned on my voicemail auto-reply and blocked their numbers from notifications. Not forever, just long enough to hear myself think again. The next morning, I took a personal day. I didn't go to the office. I didn't check email. I booked a massage at a spa a few blocks away and turned off my phone completely. Afterward, I walked through downtown in the cold, wrapped in a scarf Madison gave me last year, and searched for last-minute vacation packages. That night, I booked a flight to Maui, a week away. Ocean view, no family drama, just quiet. They found out by lunchtime the next day. The texts came first. What do you mean the catering is canceled? Is this a joke? Call Mom. She's having a fit. Then came the voicemails. Sweetheart, the mortgage company called. We need to make a $200 payment or they'll start proceedings. We don't have that kind of money. Please call. I didn't respond. Not yet. That evening, I sat in a cafe with my phone face down, watching strangers bustle through the holiday rush. I picked at a salad, letting the noise wash over me. At one point, the hostess walked by and asked if everything was okay. I looked up, surprised to realize I was smiling. Everything's fine, I said. Actually, better than it's been in a while. I didn't answer any calls that weekend. I kept my phone on silent and let the messages pile up. By Monday morning, my inbox was full emails from distant relatives, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Word had spread. Somewhere between Mom's phone tree and Kyle's social media, the story had taken a life of its own. A message from my cousin Rachel stood out. I don't know what's going on, but everyone's saying you abandoned the family and left them without a home. Aunt Denise is heartbroken. I read it twice, then opened a folder on my computer where I'd stored everything: bank statements, canceled checks, wire transfers. I replied with a short message. There are two sides to every story. I've paid the mortgage, medical bills, and holiday costs for 3 years. I've attached documentation. The attachments totaled over $100,000. I didn't add a single word of explanation. Rachel responded within the hour. I had no idea. She told us you helped out, sometimes not. I'm so sorry. I didn't reply. By Tuesday, the mortgage company had sent a notice to the house. Dad texted me 7 times in a row before finally writing, "The bank says we owe $3,200 by the 1st, or they'll start foreclosure proceedings. Please, Lauren, we don't have it." I stared at the screen for a while before forwarding him the contact information for the loan officer I'd spoken with. Her name is Allison. She can explain payment plans. No other response. Around noon, a new text came in. From Danielle. I need to clarify something. I never said you were showing off with gifts. That was Kyle's spin on it. I told them excluding you was wrong. I didn't know what to make of that, but it was the first direct acknowledgement that someone else had been in the room during that conversation. I replied simply, "Thank you for telling me." She messaged back almost immediately. Also, Kyle's been telling people you're throwing a tantrum, says you're just mad no one bowed down to your money, and they bought a boat. That's what they've been saving your Christmas money for. The screen didn't move for a few seconds, just her message sitting there, plain as day. A boat. I thought back to the summer Dad talking about taking up fishing again, Kyle posting pictures at the lake, Mom brushing off my questions about their sudden weekend plans. None of it had seemed important at the time. I didn't feel angry, just still, like everything had snapped into place in a way that finally made sense. That night I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window while the city moved outside my apartment. I played one voicemail after another. Kyle's voice sharp and irritated. "Real mature, Lauren. You throw a fit and stop paying the bills. Some of us actually need that house, unlike you and your fancy condo." Mom's voice layered with that mix of concern and manipulation I'd grown used to. "I don't understand why you're doing this. We thought you'd be relieved not to travel with your schedule. Please call me." Dad's message was the only one that made me pause. "Sweetheart, I know you're upset. Can we please talk? Your mother didn't mean it the way it came out." I didn't respond. I just turned the ringer off again and watched the streetlights blink through the cold. A few days later, Danielle messaged me again. "Just so you know, your mom tried to drive to Chicago yesterday. Kyle talked her out of it, said you'd probably call the cops." Then another line. "They were talking about contacting your job, saying you've mentally abandoned the family, just in case it gets back to you." I thanked her and asked gently, "Why are you telling me this?" Her reply came quickly. "Kyle and I broke up last night. I got tired of watching him use people." She didn't say more. She didn't have to. On Thursday, I got another email, this time from Dad. No long message, no guilt, just a line that felt different. "We need to talk. Your mother is ready to listen. Can we meet Lakeside Coffee tomorrow at 2 p.m.? I stared at the message for a long time. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go, but I texted Madison and told her where I'd be. She offered to wait nearby just in case. The next afternoon, I got to the coffee shop 15 minutes early. I picked a table in the back where I could see the entrance and ordered a latte I barely touched. They arrived together, Mom, Dad, Kyle, and Danielle. Their faces looked tired. Mom's eyes were red. Dad seemed smaller somehow, like he hadn't been sleeping. Kyle didn't meet my eyes. Danielle gave me the faintest nod. Nothing more. They sat down without a word. Dad started, "Thank you for coming." I nodded. Mom's voice cracked just a little. "We didn't expect you to react this way to one holiday change." Dad gently touched her arm. "Barbara, we agreed to start this differently." She went quiet. He turned back to me. "There have been some misunderstandings, and some things we need to take responsibility for." Kyle let out a breath. "That's putting it mildly." I looked at him. "Do you have something to say?" He leaned forward, jaw tight. "You've been holding all this money over us for years. And now, just because you didn't get your way, you cut us off. That's not right." I reached down and pulled a folder from my bag. "I'd like to show you something," I said, laying it flat on the table. Inside were 3 years of records, payments, transfers, medical bills, mortgage statements, gift receipts. I read off the totals. $18,000 toward the mortgage, $42,000 for medical, $32,000 in holiday expenses, $27,000 in emergencies. The table was silent. "I've never kept score," I said, "but it seems like now's the time." No one moved. Danielle was the first to speak. "I was there when they decided to uninvite you. Kyle started it, said Christmas would be better without you making everyone feel judged." Kyle looked away. Dad blinked. "Is that true?" He didn't answer. I looked at my mother. "Did you agree with that?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "We didn't think it would hurt you like this." Dad reached for my hand. I should have stopped it. I didn't. That's on me. No one spoke for a while. Then Mom asked quietly, "So what happens now?" I looked down at my coffee and then back at them. I looked down at the coffee cooling in front of me and then slowly back up at them. "The house is still in my name," I said. "The mortgage company hasn't received January's payment yet. You have 3 options." Mom blinked. Kyle leaned back in his chair. "Dad just waited. You can take over the payments," I continued. "We can sell the house and split whatever's left after closing costs. Or I keep paying, but with clearly defined limits." Nobody said anything. I'm not making this decision for you, but the current setup. That's over. Mom glanced at Dad, then looked back at me. We can't afford the payments, Lauren. Not without help. Then maybe it's time to downsize, I said. The house is more than you need. It's not easy to maintain. Dad's health hasn't exactly improved this year. Kyle folded his arms. So we just give up the house because you're mad? No, I said. You give up the house if you can't afford it. Danielle looked between us but stayed quiet. Dad cleared his throat. I've been thinking about that, he said. I never wanted things to go this far. But Lauren's right, we've gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. I saw something shift in Mom's face. She didn't argue. She just stared down at the table. We sat in silence for a while. Then Kyle finally spoke again. I don't know what you want from me. I don't want anything, I said. But I can't keep pretending this is working. You've always had everything handed to you, he muttered. You walk into a room and people give you promotions. You buy whatever you want. The rest of us are just trying to keep up. I didn't say anything at first. Then I picked up the folder I'd brought and laid it in front of him again. You think this was easy? He didn't respond. I worked 30 hours a week through college just to afford groceries. I stayed up until 2 a.m. most nights to finish coursework. I skipped vacations, worked through holidays, and took jobs that scared me half to death. You still ended up with the fancy job, he said. Yes, after years of pushing through. He looked away. Dad let out a slow breath. We let this go on too long. Mom's voice was quiet now. At first, we were just grateful. Every time you helped, we told ourselves it was temporary. But over time, it started to feel normal. I nodded. I should have said something years ago, I admitted. Instead, I kept giving and hoping that would fix everything. Danielle finally spoke. You've done more than any of them realize. Everyone turned to her. Sorry, she said. But it's true. You've been carrying this family. And nobody ever said thank you. Mom rubbed her forehead. We didn't mean to take advantage, Lauren. I know I said. But it happened. Kyle shook his head. So what now? You cut everyone off, no. But I set boundaries. And if we're going to rebuild anything, it starts with honesty. For the first time, nobody argued. We stayed at that table for almost 3 hours, going over timelines, budget ideas, what would need to change. Mom admitted she'd been shielding Kyle because she felt guilty. He never finished school, never found his footing. Dad owned up to going along with things to keep the peace. Kyle confessed that a lot of his anger came from not knowing who he was supposed to be anymore. By the time we stood up to leave, nothing was truly solved, but something had shifted. As we walked out into the cold, Dad touched my shoulder. Thank you, he said, for showing up, for not walking away. I almost did, I told him. But I'm here now. I got in my car, sat for a moment with the heater running, and then called Madison. She picked up on the second ring. How'd it go? She asked. We actually talked, I said. No yelling, no guilt trips, just talked. She was quiet for a second. And you kept your boundaries, I did. Good, she said. Really good. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed back toward the city. I got home that night and didn't turn on the lights right away. I just stood by the window looking out over the street below my coat still on. The conversation at the coffee shop had left me hollow and strangely clear. No yelling, no slammed doors, but for the first time in years, I hadn't tried to smooth things over. The next morning, I took my planner from the shelf above the kitchen sink, flipped to December, and drew a thick red line through the vacation days I'd taken for Christmas. Then I called HR and canceled my time off. By lunch, I was sitting on the phone with the mortgage specialist confirming that the January payment would not be processed. The statements would go directly to the Greenfield address from now on. Allison paused after we reviewed the changes. "Do you want us to notify them about the delinquency timeline?" "Yes," I said. "Let them know exactly what happens if a payment isn't received." That afternoon, I sent a brief message to the catering company. The Christmas order was canceled and the deposit was forfeited. Then I pulled out my laptop and wrote a final email to the shelter director. "Please update the Christmas dinner donation to reflect an anonymous gift. And if possible, I'd like to double the amount. Let me know if your team can handle the expansion." Her reply came 2 hours later. They could. They would. 70 more families would have a meal on Christmas Day. By the end of the day, I had done something I hadn't done in years. I'd cleared my schedule for myself. The next morning, I booked a last-minute flight to Maui and found a room at a quiet beachfront resort on the eastern side of the island. Just me, the ocean, and 7 days without expectations. I picked up a few things at the mall that evening: a swimsuit, a paperback novel, sandals. The woman at the register asked if I was heading somewhere warm. "Just a change of scenery," I said. I turned my phone back on during dinner. 12 missed calls, 27 texts, 4 new voicemails. The first was from Mom. "I need you to call me back. Now." "What do you mean the catering is canceled?" Then Kyle, "This isn't funny. You can't just pull out like this." Dad's message came quietly. "We got a notice from the bank. We don't have the money, Lauren. Please call." I set the phone down next to my plate. The noise from the restaurant faded behind the soft hum of holiday music and conversation. For once, the pressure didn't follow me into the evening. That night, I sent a final group text: "I'm unavailable until after the new year. The mortgage office can assist with any questions." Then I muted every thread, turned off notifications, and zipped up my suitcase. The flight left at dawn. The plane was quiet, filled with families in matching shirts and couples heading to warmer air. I kept to myself, watched the ocean come into view just past noon, and stepped off the plane into sunlight. At the resort, the front desk handed me a welcome drink and a room key. "You're all set through December 30th, the clerk said. The room was simple wood floors, soft linen curtains, and a balcony facing the water. I unpacked slowly, hung the new clothes in the closet, and stepped outside. The air smelled like salt and hibiscus. For dinner, I walked down the beach to a seafood shack with twinkling lights and mismatched chairs. I ate grilled shrimp under palm trees while the sun melted into the ocean. Later that night, I looked at my phone again. More texts, more voicemails. Kyle's tone had shifted, more desperate now. "You don't understand what you're doing. We can't make the payment. If we lose the house that's on you." Then one from Mom. "I don't know how we got here, but I'm begging you. Please fix this." And one last message from Dad. "We made mistakes, but I never stopped loving you. If you can call just me, I'd like that." I didn't reply. Instead, I closed the phone and watched the tide pull back from the sand. It was 2 days before Christmas when I finally responded to my dad's message. "We need to talk. Just us, if that's easier." I replied with one word: "Okay." He sent the time and place: Lakeside Coffee, downtown, 2 o'clock. I landed in Chicago the next morning on a red-eye, dropped my bag off at the apartment, and walked through the quiet, snow-dusted streets to clear my head. The city felt still, like it was holding its breath for the holiday. At 1:40, I pulled into the parking lot and sat for a moment watching the front doors of the cafe. I'd chosen a neutral spot deliberately. Not the house, not anyone's turf. Just 4 chairs, 1 table, and whatever honesty we could manage to bring into it. At 1:55, I walked in, ordered a coffee, and picked the back corner with the widest view of the room. They arrived all together, Mom, Dad, Kyle. And to my surprise, Danielle. They looked tired. Nobody spoke right away. Dad broke the silence. "Thanks for meeting us," he said. "You're welcome," I replied, keeping my voice calm. Mom reached for her coat sleeve but didn't take it off. "We didn't realize how extreme your reaction would be," she started. "It was just a change of holiday plans. We didn't mean for it to become all this." Dad touched her hand gently. "Barbara," he said quietly, "let's start this the way we agreed." She pressed her lips together and sat back. Dad turned to me. "We've been thinking about what happened, and we understand now that we leaned on you too much. Way too much." Kyle crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair. "That's putting it mildly." I glanced in his direction. "Do you want to say something, Kyle?" He looked right at me. "Yeah, actually. You've been lording your money over everyone for years. Every time someone needed help, it came with strings. Now you don't get your way, and suddenly we're cut off." I reached down and pulled the folder from my tote bag, laid it flat on the table. "In the last 3 years, I said I've paid $18,000 toward the mortgage, $42,000 in medical bills, and $32,000 in holiday costs. I've also sent $27,000 in emergency transfers for cars, phones, overdue utilities, groceries." The folder was quiet as I opened it. "That's over $200,000, not including birthday gifts, graduation money, or anything related to the family phone plan." I looked at each of them. In that time, I've received 2 thank you cards, and more complaints than I can count. Danielle leaned forward slightly, her voice low. "I was there when you got disinvited. Kyle said Christmas would be more relaxing without you. Said he was tired of walking on eggshells." Kyle looked at her. "You're really doing this now. I'm just saying what happened," she replied. "It wasn't fair. You made it sound like she was trying to control everything, but you took every dollar she sent." He went quiet. I turned toward him. "Do you honestly believe everything I have came easy?" He shrugged. "You always knew what you wanted. You got it." I worked 30 hours a week through college while keeping a full course load. I took the train to internships that didn't pay me a cent. I sat in conference rooms where I was the only woman in the room, half the time the youngest, always proving myself. He shifted in his seat. Dad looked at him. "Is that true?" "What Danielle said?" Kyle hesitated. "I just didn't want another Christmas where everything felt like it was for show." Mom finally spoke. "I'll admit something. I used to think the same. That the gifts were too much, that it made us feel small. But the truth is, I liked them. I got used to them. And when you canceled everything, it felt like punishment." I nodded slowly. I never meant to punish anyone. But I couldn't keep pouring into something that gave nothing back. The room fell quiet for a moment. Dad reached for his coffee. "When your mother said not to come for Christmas, I should have stopped her. I didn't. That's on me. Why didn't you?" I asked. He took a breath. "Because Kyle said he'd move out. Your mom panicked. I didn't want to deal with another fight. I always go along," he said, shaking his head. "It's a habit I need to break." Mom looked at him, then at me. "We didn't plan it to hurt you. We just lost sight of things. It got too easy to expect help, and too hard to talk about the real stuff." I didn't respond. I just waited. Finally, she said, "So, what happens now?" I laid out the 3 choices again, this time more clearly. Take over the payments, sell the house, or let me keep paying with boundaries. "We can't make the payments," she said softly. "Then maybe it's time to look at something smaller," I said. "There's no shame in that." We talked for another hour, going over practical steps, budgeting, what downsizing might look like, whether Kyle would consider getting a full-time job, whether Mom might take on part-time work again just for stability. By the time the coffee cups were empty, something had changed in the room. No guarantees, no promises, but something real. When we stood, Mom didn't reach for a hug, but she said, "I hear you, I really do." And Dad said, "We'll figure something out, for real this time." Kyle didn't say anything, but he nodded barely. Danielle gave me a small smile as we walked out. I watched them cross the street, their backs to the gray sky. Then I sat in the car with the heater on and called Madison. "How'd it go?" she asked. "We finally had a real conversation," I said. "No pretending." "And your boundaries?" she asked. "Still standing," I said. For the first time, I think they actually see me. Christmas morning in Maui started with a soft breeze through the balcony curtains and the smell of Kona coffee from the pot I'd set the night before. The sky was streaked with coral and gold, and below me, waves rolled in slow and steady against the shoreline. I wrapped myself in a light robe, carried my coffee outside, and sat with both hands around the mug. The air was warm, quiet. I stayed like that for almost an hour, not speaking, not moving, just breathing in the peace. At breakfast, the hostess led me to a small table near the railing. Another woman about my age was seated nearby reading a novel and picking at a plate of papaya and toast. When her napkin fell to the floor, I handed it back, and she smiled. "I'm Melissa," she said, "here avoiding Christmas." I smiled back, same. We ended up talking for the next hour. She told me her story in fragments, estranged parents, years of therapy, the choice to break cycles she'd grown up inside of. She'd done this before, spent holidays alone, quietly, deliberately. "The first one's the hardest," she said, stirring her coffee. "After that, you start to realize what's actually yours to carry." We spent the rest of the day together, hiked a short trail to a nearby waterfall, stopped for shaved ice on the way back. Her company was easy. There was no pressure to explain anything further. That evening, I sat on the beach while the sun dropped into the water. The sand was still warm, the tide barely moved. My phone buzzed in my bag. Dad's name. I let it ring once, then answered. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," he said. His voice was gentle. "Merry Christmas, Dad. I'm calling just from me, not on behalf of anyone." "Okay," I said. "We had a quiet dinner. Your Aunt Susan came over. Just something small." "That sounds nice," I said. "We missed you," he added after a moment. "And I want to say something I should have said earlier." I waited. I let this go on too long. When you started helping, I should have been more careful. But I wasn't. It made things easier for us. "And I stopped paying attention to what it was costing you. I didn't say anything right away. I know this year got messy," he continued. "But I'm proud of you. I always have been. I just didn't show it the right way." "Thanks, Dad." "Where are you, by the way? I saw your out-of-office message." "I'm in Maui." There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. "Good. I'm glad you did something for yourself." After we hung up, I checked my texts. There was one from Mom. "I've been thinking a lot. I'm sorry for how I spoke to you. I didn't realize how much I've taken you for granted. I'd like to talk when you're ready." There was no pressure in the message, no guilt, just words I hadn't expected. The week passed quietly. Melissa and I shared a few more meals, swapped stories, traded book recommendations. We promised to stay in touch. On New Year's Day, I landed back in Chicago to cold air and soft snow on the sidewalks. My apartment smelled faintly of the pine-scented candle I'd left behind, still sitting half-burned on the coffee table. I unpacked, made tea, and checked my email. There were 3 messages from the mortgage company. One confirmed that a partial payment had been made on the house. Another outlined a new contact number added to the account. The third included a copy of a letter signed by all 3 of them outlining a transition plan. They'd sat down and written it together. Kyle would take on full responsibility for utilities. Dad would contact the insurance provider to explore adjustments in their policy. Mom would begin researching part-time work options after the holidays. They proposed a plan to begin taking over mortgage payments within 6 months and included a request for me to continue covering the next 2 payments during the transition. It was clear, organized, and written without assumptions. I read it twice. 2 days later, I drove to Greenfield and knocked on the front door of the house I still legally owned. Dad answered, and this time there was no hesitation before the hug. Inside, I noticed small changes right away. The cable box was gone, just the basic channels now. A handwritten budget was taped to the fridge. The kitchen chair that used to wobble had been repaired instead of replaced. Store-brand groceries lined the pantry shelves. "We're learning to live within our means," Mom said, as she handed me a cup of tea. "It's not as bad as we thought. Honestly, it's a little freeing." We sat together at the table, the same table where I'd eaten countless meals, written birthday cards, and paid overdue bills without a word. "I've been thinking about something I said. If the next 6 months go as planned, we'll sell the house. You'll have what you need to move into something smaller." Mom nodded. "That's the goal. We'll split the equity fairly," I added. She didn't argue. Kyle stopped by mid-afternoon. He looked tired, but there was something steadier in the way he carried himself. "I got the job," he said, sitting down across from me. "Marketing assistant, full-time, starts next week." "That's great," I said. He nodded once. "Thanks for the reference." We didn't rehash anything, didn't need to. By Valentine's Day, I'd made the final 2 payments on the mortgage. We set a listing date for the house and scheduled a meeting with a real estate agent. That spring, we gathered again, this time in the backyard, under the same string lights I'd once paid to have installed. But the food came from crock pots and casserole dishes. Everyone had brought something. No catered trays, no gift bags, just a quiet, shared meal. As Mom and I stood at the sink, rinsing dishes, she said quietly, "I never realized how badly our arrangement was hurting all of us." "I did too much," I said. "And I didn't do enough," she replied. "But we're getting better." She reached for my hand, still damp from the sponge, gave it a gentle squeeze. We didn't need to say anything more. By early summer, the house was on the market. Mom found a small 2-bedroom condo on the quiet side of town. It had everything they needed. No stairs for Dad, a manageable garden patch, and just enough room for a second-hand dining table they'd refinished together. Kyle moved into an apartment across town with a friend from work. He was still figuring things out, but for the first time, he was standing on his own feet. The last family gathering at the old house took place in late June. We kept it simple, a potluck meal on paper plates, lemonade in a plastic pitcher, folding chairs on the lawn. Nobody tried to impress anyone. We laughed easily, spoke plainly, and when the sun started to dip behind the trees, no one rushed to leave. After dessert, I walked through the house one last time. The scuffed banister, the faded couch, the sound of the screen door creaking shut behind me. I paused in the living room where the tree used to go every Christmas. The quiet felt different now. Not empty, just settled. A week later, the sale closed. I met Mom and Dad at the title office to sign the final documents. When the check arrived, we split it 3 ways, clean, simple, fair. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table in Chicago balancing my checkbook. I still keep one even with everything online. There's something steady about writing numbers by hand. I ran my thumb over the final line that listed July mortgage. Not due. No payments left. I closed the book. Later that evening, I got a message from Madison. She'd just come back from a long trip and wanted to meet for dinner. I told her everything start to finish. Afterwards, she leaned across the table and said, "You gave them a way out. Not by rescuing them, but by finally letting go." I nodded, because what I'd learned was this generosity without boundaries becomes something else entirely. It becomes expectation, obligation, even resentment. But when you set clear lines, when you stop rescuing people from their own reflection, that's when real change can begin. That Christmas taught me that love without respect isn't enough. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step back and let people take responsibility for their own choices. and that your worth was never meant to be measured in payments or favors or how much you sacrificed to stay included. Sometimes the deepest healing begins the moment you say no more. And sometimes that no spoken, clearly and calmly, becomes the turning point that finally sets everyone free. If this story touched something in you, I'd be honored if you left a comment or shared your own. And if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe, especially if you've ever had to learn that loving others doesn't mean losing yourself. Thanks for being here.